If you've ever played this game, and if you're still with me, you should have, you probably had the impression that Locke was a complete deadweight in the beginning. And that would be an accurate depiction of his abilities there. Unlike all the other characters you meet early on, he lacks a special skill that can deal substantial amounts of damage, instead relying on a weak physical. Worse, the fight command is the only one that's actually affected by a row. Everything else, even other physical-based attacks like auto crossbow or raging fist, deal full damage from the back row. So whereas just about everyone else can safely be put in the back row without affecting their damage output at all, Locke doesn't even have that luxury. There is, however, something you can do to help alleviate this somewhat. In the Returner's hideout, when Bannon asks Terra for her aid, refuse 3 times. You will then be given the Genji Glove, which allows its bearer to dual wield. And since the shields you can find in the World of Balance are hardly impressive, give that Genji Glove to Locke and never remove it, at least until the World of Ruin. Not long after that, you'll be faced with the Narshe battle sequence, and you'll be realizing Locke is still by far your weakest character. What I do to make things easier is make 2 parties of 3, making sure Terra and Celeste are in different parties, then have the third party be Locke alone and have him do nothing. He'll be missing out on some experience, but he'll be perfectly able to play catch-up right after that. The main reason is that at this point, you'll be able to buy weapons that only Locke can use and allow him to attack from the back row, such as the Moonring Blade and the Boomerang. It's at that point that Locke will start gaining steam, but be very careful in the Magitech research facility, as most enemies have very high physical defense. And while Celeste has magic, Edgar has flash, Sabin has rising phoenix, and so on, Locke will once again be deadweight unless you teach him some magic. This is why, as soon as you can start giving your characters magic, you have to work towards giving Locke Thundara in time for the Magitech research facility. After that area, your efforts will be rewarded with the Hawkeye, a weapon that has a 50% chance of dealing triple damage to floating targets, and there will be a lot of these in the remainder of the World of Balance. Buy 2 for Locke as soon as possible and never let go of them. The elemental swords are also an option, but double Hawkeyes are just that amazing. After the end of the world, Locke will go AWOL for quite a while, but when you do manage to get him back, he comes with the Valiant Knife, arguably the best offensive weapon in the game. Its attack power may look somewhat low, but that's because its true benefits are hidden. Not only does it ignore defense entirely, but it also inflicts bonus damage when your HP gets lower. Of course, that's a situation you want to avoid, but we're talking about a pretty hefty bonus here. This thing is the reason why you'd want to use Locke at all in the World of Ruin. The Master's Scroll is another thing that Locke will definitely want to use, as your fight command is altered so that you attack 4 times instead of once, although each hit only deals half damage. This effectively doubles your damage, until your regular damage hits 99.99, at which point the ratio keeps going higher, for obvious reasons. There are a few choices available as for what to do with your other hand. Unlike in the World of Balance, now there are some nifty shields that you can use, so that Genji Glove now becomes optional. If you choose to use a shield, you're freeing up a relic slot, which is always nice, but extra damage is always welcome. So if you choose to keep the Genji Glove, the most notable options for your second weapon are the Ultima Weapon and the Lightbringer. The former is my favorite, since like the Valiant Knife, it ignores defense, and as far as HP-related bonuses go, it's the complete opposite, since whereas the Valiant Knife is better at low HP, the Ultima Weapon deals more damage when your HP is high. As a result, you get lots of damage no matter how much HP you have left. I guess I should mention that this set is quite popular, but unfortunately it's for the wrong reasons, since Novus players are all over the potential of 80,000 damage in a single move, but that's only attainable at obscenely high levels with obscenely high strength. This makes Locke an overall solid character later in the game, although slightly overhyped. Up next, we have His Majesty Edgar Roni Figaro. His title in the Game Boy Advance version is Machinist, but Machist fits equally well if you ask me. When you think of Edgar's worth in battle, you instantly think of his special skill set. Tools makes Edgar into a bona fide god early game, and I'm sure this is an impression everyone who played this game had upon first getting to use him. One of the tools he's given right off the bat is the auto crossbow, which deals physical damage to all enemies. Now I know it says moderate damage right there, but early on said damage can only be called obscene. As I've said before, though, physical damage doesn't climb very fast, which brings the auto crossbow back to Earth before long. Later on in the World of Balance, he obtains other tools to keep himself afloat. The Flash is very similar to the auto crossbow, except it deals magical damage. It's more damaging than the auto crossbow until you start racking up those strength boosts, so your multi-target damage will remain pretty good for a while. But the two biggest and most popular tools are the drill and the chainsaw, which both deal substantial physical damage. The chainsaw is stronger, however, it also has a 25% chance of inflicting instant death on the target. While it sounds like a win-win scenario in theory, in practice you'll start encountering more and more enemies that are immune to instant death, including bosses. This essentially makes the chainsaw into a more powerful but less accurate counterpart to the drill. Personally, I prefer the latter, but if you're feeling lucky or facing an enemy vulnerable to instant death, by all means, use the chainsaw. There are other, less interesting tools Edgar can use, such as the Bioblaster, which also deals multi-target damage, though it tends to do less than the auto crossbow and the Flash. The Noise Blaster is a multi-target confusion attack that never fails barring an immunity, and it would be really nifty if confusion immunity wasn't as widespread later on. And in the early game, well, why confuse enemies when you can completely slaughter them? The Debilitator and Air Anchor, well, they're entirely worthless, meaning you get your best tools halfway through the World of Balance, and that is going to mean trouble down the road. Like Locke, Edgar has high strength and low magic, which makes him into another physical attacker, though one that operates very differently from Locke. Fortunately, Edgar can exploit the stat spread well, thanks to most of his best tools being physical, barring Flash, as well as the Dragoon build that's his bread and butter in the World of Ruin. He doesn't have many equipment issues, though he would definitely like getting one of the top-tier armors. So as long as you keep him up to speed in that department, Edgar won't be killed easily. This is compounded by the fact that tools and jump ignore row, so there's no reason to use Edgar in the front row. Ever! He also benefits from excellent Esper time being available at every point in the game aside from the Tamaza arc and the very early World of Ruin, so you can rack those strength points up very easily. Unfortunately, as I hinted to before, Edgar's problem is that he starts out godly when you first get him, then falls back gradually. His tools remain dominant throughout the World of Balance, which has the added perk of being able to use a weapon with desirable stat boosts over one with more raw power, because of the fight command being completely useless. Flash in particular is Edgar's answer to all those physically defensive critters in the Magitech research facility. Unfortunately, the fact that tools don't get better beyond the drill and chainsaw will eventually catch up to Edgar, which means he needs to reinvent himself if he eventually wants to keep dealing damage. Fortunately, the Dragonhorn relic found in the Phoenix Cave allows for another entirely different build, namely the Dragoon setup. Equip the Dragoon boots, which change the fight command into jump, a spear, which deals extra damage when paired with jump, and the Dragon Horn to increase your damage output by more than double, and you're set. Unfortunately, while it outdamages the drill and chainsaw by a bit, it's still not horrifyingly strong, especially for a build that hogs both relic slots. As a result, there are many, many better options than Edgar in the World of Ruin, and this is a concept several players have a hard time coming to grips with, because they remember the God of Destruction from the start of the game, and they don't really realize that this is an era that's long gone by. As an extra kick in the nuts, The Longinus, which is Edgar's special Dragon's Den weapon, despite being a spear, doesn't count as one in Jump's damage formula, meaning some of that extra damage is lost. Especially insulting considering the Longinus is Edgar's strongest spear in terms of raw attack power. Being forced to keep the holy or radiant lances is rather painful. On to Edgar's brother, Sabin Rene Figaro, who incidentally doesn't look very much like royalty. Either way, one thing he shares with his brother is his heavy reliance on his special ability for damage early on, though he will get more mileage out of his blitzes than Edgar with his tools. Ah, the blitz command. If I had a penny for every forum thread asking how to use blitzes, I'd be set for life. Of course, since you've already played this game, I don't need to tell you how they work, and I'll go straight to how well they work. Oddly enough, they follow a weird pattern. Odd-numbered blitzes are never worth using, and amusingly enough, they get worse and worse as time goes on. Meanwhile, the even-numbered blitzes are Sabin's bread and butter, and are good enough that you won't ever need that fight command. Aura Cannon is one of the blitzes you start out with, and deals solid holy damage to one enemy. At level 15, you learn Rising Phoenix, which is less powerful, but fire elemental, and hits all targets. Later on, at level 30, you obtain Razor Gale, which is another multi-target blitz that is, of course, wind elemental, and is slightly stronger than Aura Cannon against a single target. But Sabin's main claim to fame is his final blitz, which can and should be learned from Duncan as soon as you get the Falcon. Phantom Rush deals outrageous magical damage to a single target. Yes, magical. You heard me right. Because if there's one word the animation evokes, it's magic. Yeah, sure. But who cares? The damage is insane, to such an extent that if you've been diligently boosting Sabin's magic power, it will get pretty close to the 99.99 cap as soon as you first learn it. Do remember that single-target blitzes can't be targeted to a specific enemy, though. As for the other blitzes, Raging Fist should only be used once against Vargas, then forgotten completely since Aura Cannon is better in every conceivable way. Actually, that's not quite true. Raging Fist can still come in handy in some rare scenarios, most notably slaying Cactuars while grinding for AP. Meteor Strike seems to exist only as the answer to a few trivia questions, most notably due to the fact that it's a single-target attack that deals less damage when you're faced with multiple attackers. Are you serious? It's common for multi-target attacks to deal less damage when there's more than one enemy, but a single-target move? What were they thinking? I could also say that about what everyone remembers Meteor Strike for, namely the fact that it doesn't work on larger enemies. Except the Phantom Train. Yep, try it if you want. Sabin can suplex a train! In fact, if you have the game, you owe it to yourself to try it at least once before one-hit KOing it with a Phoenix down. The other two blitzes are for healing, but not only are they outright worse than Cura or Curaga, Soul Spiral also takes Sabin out of the battle. Don't ever consider using them. Period. I will say this. It's very tempting to raise Sabin as a physical fighter, since not only is he a huge hulking muscle man, but monks in gaming tend to be pure physical powerhouses. Whatever you do, don't fall in that trap! All of the blitzes I highlighted as the good ones earlier on are based on magic. Not to mention, even if you had any reason to use that fight command, Sabin's equipment is a disaster! His weapons are considerably weaker than most of the other characters, and that issue extends to armor as well. Despite coming straight out of a World's Strongest Man competition, he can't equip heavy armor or shields, including the Force and Genji armors. As a result, Sabin is the textbook definition of a glass cannon. At the very least, he can be put in the back row since blitzes ignore his row. even the useless physical ones. He also benefits from the most Esper time out of anyone in the game, since he only misses out on the Tamaza arc, as well as the first 3 or 4 random battles in the World of Ruin.